You know what I really hate? Characters who just up and disappear, when the authors and creators really don't respect them enough to keep them around. Most of them don't even get an actual explanation. Ben Geller from Friends, Lisa Miller, and everything that is in the Scott Pilgrim comic. I mean, who doesn't remember Graggle from The Simpsons? But there is one character that really upsets its fandom. Her name is... Must be allergies. Weird. I don't remember owning so many firearms. In Dragon Ball, there is a usually peaceful, calm, and cheery person that transforms into a rageful, blonde version of themselves. I could be describing Super Saiyan Goku, or I could be describing Launch. Blonde hair. According to Dragon Ball, the root of all anger. Launch was one of the few recurring female characters in early Dragon Ball, being introduced on Chapter 26 or Episode 15 of the anime. We're introduced to her as an angry criminal running away from the police until she sneezes and turns back into a normal girl, whom Goku and Krillin have to bring back to Roshi as the first test of their training. She doesn't accompany the school to the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai, but she does remain as part of the cast throughout all the childhood arcs. She even saves the heroes from General Blue's time bomb, and kicks God into the crater created by the Kiko Ho in order to save him from Piccolo's super explosive wave. But that's really the last time we see her. Launch was never a super important part of the Dragon Crew. In fact, I would argue that her not coming to the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai was a sign of things to come. Even so, she was certainly memorable, and maintains popularity to this day, with figures, cards, etc. Something quite impressive for someone who hasn't appeared since chapter 194. If you look online, there are hundreds of fans clamoring about how forgetful Toriyama is, with the main example being Launch. But if you ask me, this is probably one of the worst examples of Toriyama's forgetfulness. Or maybe the best. Let me explain. Hey SmugStick, it's everyone. I make lore and what-if videos, and today we're talking about one of Dragon Ball's most underrated characters. So don't forget to leave a like before she steals it. Most of the information come from various interviews and things like that, from data books, TV shows, etc. All of which have been translated by the amazing people over at the Kansenshu website. So huge credit to them, they even have guides on rumors such as this one. Toriyama has indeed stated that he forgot Launch in an interview from 2003 for the American Shonen Jump. Toriyama said, "To tell you the truth, I totally forgot about her at one point. And then I remembered her after a while, and I had to think of a reason why she disappeared. So I made it seem as if she was running after Ten Shinhan." This is a reference to chapter 196, where Krillin reveals that Launch had gone off to chase after Tien. People take this out of context to say that Toriyama completely forgot about her for years. But if we look back at it, it seems more so to mean that he forgot to add Launch to a single scene, and he ended up writing her out completely. So let me preface this by saying that I do not think Toriyama actually forgot about Launch. He just forgot that he didn't forget about her. Hear me out. To many of us, there is a clear line drawn between the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, or the end of the original Dragon Ball, and the Saiyan arc, aka the start of Z, especially since in most Western countries, we experienced Z first. But when it comes to the manga and Toriyama's week-to-week work on the series, only 2 weeks had passed since the last time he drew Launch. Chapter 194 came out on September 27th, 1988, while chapter 196, the last time Launch is mentioned, came out on October 8th, 1988. This is why it doesn't make sense to me for him to say that he forgot her. There had been periods of time before this where Launch hadn't appeared for months, and yet Toriyama remembered to bring her back into the story. Even if he did forget her in that short period of time, why was she never added back? Well, what if I told you he did? See, Launch's last manga appearance was at the end of the Piccolo arc, and although that may be true for her story appearances, she does technically appear in the manga later. But I don't blame you if you didn't know this. Her first appearance after being gone for a few years was on the spine of Volume 21, released in 1990. This was drawn by Toriyama after all, meaning that Launch remained in Toriyama's mind 2 whole years after her last appearance. If that's not enough proof, let me give you another example. On the 1991 Weekly Shonen Jump issue number 34, published on the 19th of December 1990, there's a small Christmas special showing us what our side characters are up to while Goku and the others handle Frieza on Namek. Puar and Oolong are relaxing by the tree, Master Roshi cleans the house, the Dead Sea Fighters play hide and seek, Bulma plays a racing game, and finally, Launch is seen one last time. Where did that jerk Ten Shinhan run off to? So, it looks like she never found out Tien died. This is actually the last we we see of Launch for the rest of the manga. But SmugStick, doesn't that prove that Launch was forgotten about? Well, no actually. But first, I want to cover something else. Let me go back in time to 1989, where Launch appeared in 3 whole episodes of the anime. On episodes 11 and 12, she appears during Tien and Chaozu's training for the Saiyan arrival on Earth. Then she appears once more on episode 30, sitting lonely at a bar drinking her sorrows away because of Tenshinhan's death. This is her final appearance in the anime for a long time, besides a few flashbacks. You could argue that this is of course filler, so it doesn't help my point, but in reality, the idea of Launch and Tien's relationship during these episodes came from Toriyama himself. The 1989 Dragon Ball Z Anime Special magazine mentions how the anime scene where Launch chases after Tien until reaching Korin Tower and ends up meeting Upa and Bora was all Toriyama's idea. But then, why is Launch gone for so long? Surely Toriyama forgot about her after the Frieza arc. I think it all comes down to the character's usefulness. I like Launch a lot, don't get me wrong, but Toriyama really made her a one-note character. Her sneezing is funny, and blonde Launch is cool, but she doesn't get much more than that. I think this is one of the main reasons why she didn't go to the 21st Tenkaichi Budokai. I don't think Toriyama could have gotten many things out of her. Toriyama's oversight of including her at the start of the Saiyan arc ends up being a chance for him not to have to draw the character at all, especially since in the last arc she does appear in, Launch ends up having little to do in the sidelines. It's sad, but I just don't think Toriyama found her all that interesting, and in the end, didn't know what to do with her. Writing her out meant that he could just focus on characters whom he could use to push the story more. A sacrificial lamb, if you will. Even Tenshinhan himself, Launch's love interest, slowly becomes less and less important as the series goes on. However, Launch's story could have indeed continued. As many of you know, Launch appears once more in the anime at the end of the Buu arc, when Goku gathers energy from everyone and a bunch of his past friends give him Genki. On episode 285, Launch appears in her blue-haired form, having become a truck driver, and happily shares her energy with Goku. This is anime only, but she did almost get a similar scene in the manga. Remember the panel where Android 17 appears as a park ranger and gives energy to Goku? Well, that was not originally going to be 17. In Dai Senshu 7, Toriyama explains that in the draft for 17's panel, it was originally going to be Launch. That's right, we could have gotten one more appearance in the manga, but it was sadly not meant to be. If we look at 17's dialogue during the scene, it would have made more sense for Launch. 17 says, it's been a long time since I've heard his voice too. But 17 never actually met Goku by this point. In Dragon Ball Super, this was retconned as 17 having been able to hear Goku while inside of Cell, but that's a very recent change. For years and years, this line was just a bit weird, and when you know it was originally going to be Launch saying it, it makes more sense. Even so, and I'm repeating myself here, this isn't where Launch's story ends, because she has made occasional appearances in Dragon Ball, in particular the 2008 Jump Special, Yo, Son Goku and His Friends Return. It was a big deal. Not only was this the first animated Dragon Ball content in over a decade, but the story itself was written by Toriyama. A manga adaptation was also released, drawn by Naho Oishi, whom you may know as the artist for Episode of Bardock and Dragon Ball SD. Anyways, I mention this because Launch appears in both the anime and the manga versions of the special as a very quick cameo. Sadly, that does seem to be her final appearance. She doesn't show up in neither Super nor GT. I really think it just comes down to the writers not being interested in using her, and finding her gimmick boring. Funny enough, she even appears at the end credits of the first Dragon Ball Kai ending theme, despite never appearing on the show. I'm sure if you watched it on Nicktoons, you wondered who the hell that blue-haired girl was. I do want to mention that in 2010, an MMO called Dragon Ball Online was released. Toriyama worked closely with the team for the story and designs. In it, the timeline mentions that on age 779, Launch successfully broke out of prison for the 100th time. So maybe that's an explanation. She's been in and out of prison for years. But that makes me wonder, is there a place for Launch in Dragon Ball Super as it is now? Well, I would argue there's more room for her now than there ever was before. The Dragon Ball Super anime has introduced a bunch of slice of life episodes, and other smaller stories that allow the non-fighters to interact more. So I would love for her to come back. She could even have her own episode. Imagine a reunion between Launch, Krillin, and Goku. For example, and I'm just spitballing here, Launch robs a bank, and Krillin's a cop, so he has to stop her. Launch doesn't recognize who Krillin is, friends until he does some fancy martial arts and she realizes all those belong to the turtle school, a part of her life she hasn't seen in years. Instead of actually arresting her, Krillin agrees to help out Launch a little. Maybe he even wiggles a feather on her nose to force her to sneeze. Krillin brings her to Goku and it's a sweet reunion. Goku would probably be happy to see her but not care that much. But for the fans, I've actually seen this said a lot on Reddit and things like that, but Launch was the closest thing to a mother figure Goku had for at least a few years. So just for that, it would be sweet to have the three of them together again. Maybe she even visits Tien at his dojo, finding out that he's not just a farmer anymore. And from there, she can appear a little bit more. Maybe she finds out that Goku has a son, who happens to be married into one of the richest families in the world. Maybe she tries to steal from Mr. Satan, and either him or Bulma feel bad for her, giving her a place to stay. There's so many characters she's never even met. Imagine the rude, blonde Launch meeting Beerus. Surely he would think about destroying her right then and there. But those are just a few ideas. I've always wanted short stories about the side Dragon Ball characters, even if it's just about her planning a bank heist and getting away with it. I would love to just explore the other characters a little bit more. I've even seen this theory saying that maybe she's 17's wife, since we've never seen her. I don't believe this theory, but anything that keeps Launch in the mind of fans is a positive for me. Let me know in the comments how you would bring Launch back. I'm in the car now, change of scenery. My basic point here is that Launch is an interesting character with cool things to do, but it needs to be in the right hands. I think the anime staff did an honestly good job overall using her. In the 22nd World Tournament, she tries to kill Suru Senin, she stops Pamput's manager. Even in Kakarot, there's small side missions that use her and they're pretty fun. You can find her through the world, she even shows up at Kame House at one point.
Did someone call for me? Oh, you must be the boy Master Roshi's been talking about. You're Goku's son, right? It's a pleasure to meet you. My name's Launch.
Launch is a fun character, and if put in the right hands, I'm sure there was potential for more. But in Dragon Ball, if you aren't strong, it's hard to get screen time. I do hope she reappears one day. I'll leave you guys with a quote from Toriyama explaining where she is nowadays, taken from a 2013 interview with Mando Kobayashi for Battle of Gods. Stoic Tenshinhan mainly does farming in addition to his training. He can split into multiple bodies and grow extra arms, so harvesting the crops goes quickly. He was found by Launch, who fell in love with him at first sight, and had been constantly pursuing his whereabouts, and even reluctantly lived together with her. But she wasn't cut out for farming, and Tenshinhan had no interest in romance, so she left after just a few days. After that, it seems Launch apparently stops in from time to time. So somewhere out there, Launch is visiting Tenshinhan. Hopefully she stops in to see us one day too. Were you really about to leave without subscribing? Were you really gonna leave without leaving a like? You know, it's people like you who don't subscribe and leave a like that made me wanna... Thanks for watching, everyone, and a special thanks to the patrons of the channel. I know this was a pretty different video from what I usually do, but I'm going to be making a lot more of these non-what-ifs in this kind of style. I had a lot of fun making it. I do have new what-if scenarios coming soon, including one about Bardock, and on Sunday, Season 1 of What If Goku Was Turned Into an Android. I re-edited nearly completely the first 2 parts to make them look better, and I'm currently working on the DBS section, hoping to start that back up soon. See you guys soon!